All right, behind enemy lines time, we welcome in a friend of the podcast, Marcel Robinson. Does a great job covering the Jaguars for Action Sports Jax. Marcel, it's been a while, but at the same time, it also feels like we just kind of talked last week. It's back already. Kind of like the season never even did leave us. Welcome back, man. Thanks for joining us here on the Blue Horseshoe Podcast.
No, of course, absolutely. Always a pleasure to come on and chat with you guys about the good old Colts and Jags rivalry.
Even though it does feel like we just talked yesterday, it's been a while since week 6, and these two teams have gone in totally different directions since that home game in Indy last time. Obviously, the Jaguars won the division and won a playoff game. And now also welcome in, Marcel, a big-time receiver in Calvin Ridley. This is where I want to start. This is an interesting one because he's not played right in a year and a half, but the last time we did see him on the field of the Falcons, he's really damn good. What have you seen from Calvin Ridley so far in training camp, and what can Colts fans expect from the Jaguars offense? Like, is he going to be definitely the number one guy come Sunday that Trevor Lawrence going to be looking to?
I mean, the best way I can describe Calvin Ridley is as advertised. I mean, the guy looks like he hasn't lost a step. I went to 90% of the training camp practices. I've seen him in pregame warmups. Obviously, the limited time that he's got in the preseason games, and this guy is easily, I think, still one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I mean, just his footwork is phenomenal. It's crazy when you watch. The Jaguars have a good stable of wide receivers after Calvin Ridley, but it's just crazy when you watch them go through drills. And you'll see Calvin go through a drill, and then right after him is usually Christian Kirk, who, by the way, is still one of the top receivers in the league. Definitely up there. But it still just looks different. It's like whoa, this is what one of these guys looked like. I mean, truthfully, Calvin Ridley could go down as already as one of the best wide receivers we've had in the city since a guy like Jimmy and Keenan. And I mean, that's saying something. This guy, you saw the catch he made in the Dallas game, or the Miami game, the toe tap or heel tap, I should say. I mean, this guy's definitely hungry. We talked to him; he's hungry, ready to get back, and kind of silence the noise, so to speak. And he hates when you say shake off the rust because he doesn't feel rusty. But I mean, this guy coming to week 1, I mean, not even just week 1, just watch out. I mean, this guy's ready to play, and I think he's definitely got the potential and will put up big numbers all year long.
Kind of along those same lines, your quarterback Trevor Lawrence obviously caught fire along with the team. Last half of the season really made that fairy tale run to the AFC South Championship. People talk about year 2 jumps all the time, and I know there's year 1, but we're not going to talk about that right now. But with Doug Peterson here and him having a year in Doug Peterson's offense, do you see that leap again for Trevor Lawrence happening this season?
Absolutely. I think the key word here is confidence. I mean, he's a guy that from a skill set standpoint, he's always had it. We've seen it since he's come into the league. The guy that we thought he was going to be coming from Clemson, he's shown the potential to have that. And coming into year 2 with Doug Peterson, I mean, the confidence level is just super high. But the best part about him is that he's still the same person. That's one thing that we noticed. And just talking with some of the guys in the locker room, they say that this is a guy that he's even killed, whether it's good or bad, he never rattles. And, just having the confidence and, of course, being surrounded by the weapons that he has. And of course, obviously that experience in this offense. I mean, this is a guy who's definitely worth the hype. I mean, getting a lot of love from not just here in Jacksonville, but all around the country about one of the guys that could potentially be in that MVP race. And just complete unbiased opinion. This is a guy that is definitely has everything that you need. Like I've always said that, in terms of quarterbacks, when you're looking at the quarterback of your team, you ask yourself, can you see this guy winning you a Super Bowl? Can you see him hoisting a Lombardi trophy? And if the answer is no, or I don't know, then you've got the wrong guy. But that's definitely not the case here in Jacksonville.
So you mentioned Trevor Lawrence, right? We just talked about Calvin Ridley. You have Christian Kirk. You have Zay Jones. You have Evan Ingram. You got a lot of weapons, Marcel, in the pass game. From the Colts' perspective, their secondary is the biggest question mark, and I would say on the defense, the biggest weakness going into this game. Is Doug Peterson going to try, you think, this year, especially week 1, to establish any sort of balanced run pass, or is this just going to be kind of like Kansas City 2.0? We got a great offense, pass the ball, and we're not even going to try to really, keep you honest running. We're going to throw.
I think, honestly, it's going to be one of those take what the defense gives you type of games. The good thing about this team is that they kind of embody the personality of Doug Peterson, and Trevor Lawrence. And it's not really going out there with anything to prove. Like, they're not really focused on going out there and, taking the league by storm or proving that they're the best offense, in the league. Truthfully, excuse me, I don't think there is a team in the league that can line up and defend this offense one-on-one at all. I mean, you talked about the names you mentioned: Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. I mean, you can still throw in Jamal Agnew, who's kind of the Swiss Army knife guy. He gets there and makes some noise. You talk about the running backs, Travis Etienne and the rookie Tank Bigsby. They have so many weapons on offense. Problem is, there's only one football, but I think definitely the plan is to just go out there and just take what the defense gives you. I mean, if that means that if Gus comes out and kind of crowds the box, well, then we'll work on the outside. If they put a little more pressure downfield, well, then they'll run the ball. I think they have the flexibility and the versatility to do that, but I don't think the approach is let's go out here and show the league what we can do, especially because, coaches are usually kind of paranoid. So they don't like to show any more than what they have to. So they can go out there and win with Trevor throwing the ball, 193 yards, then they'll do just that.
Looking on the other side of the ball in defense in Jacksonville, going back even, 5, 6, 7 years during this streak where the Colts have never won down there. It seems like every single time they play Jacksonville is a highly physical game. And even in years where the Colts offensive line has been among the best in the league, Jacksonville's kind of dominated that matchup in the trenches. Is that a strength again this year? You feel like that defensive front is something that can be the engine of this defense?
I think if we're talking about the defense in terms of where their strength is, I would say probably up front, kind of definitely in the box. Of course, there are still some pass rushing questions. Getting after the quarterback has been in a topic of conversation, especially since they didn't really address it, heavily in free agency or the draft. So the hope is that the guys that they have, the guys from the end, Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker, they take that jump because they need to, and they know that as well. But yeah, I think definitely if we're talking about a strength, I mean, honestly, it might be on the back end. I mean, the secondary here is probably the one group in this Jaguars defense that doesn't have many question marks. I mean, Tyson Campbell is emerging as one of the top corners in the league, and in the safeties in Cisco and Andre Cisco and Rashawn Jenkins. So I think up front, it's all about the depth, truthfully. And they've got a couple guys. We're missing one, Devon Hamilton, who obviously is on IR, which is a big deal because he's having a great training camp, one of the big nose guys in the middle. But definitely that defensive line, if there is a weak spot, it could potentially be there in the passing game. Now, in the run game, they've typically been worked pretty well, especially with the linebackers, Foye Oluokun, Devin Lloyd, of course, both guys who are definitely downhill runners. So the point of attack is the trenches is definitely a topic of, I guess, concern, for lack of a better term. But I think that's definitely been a focus that they've approached or they've definitely addressed coming into this season.
It's obviously, Marcel, not new for the Jaguars to expect a different Colts quarterback from year to year. It's been a rotating, cast of characters for a while now. So that's not new, but a new head coach and a new style of quarterback that the Jaguars have not seen from the Colts in a long time. Shane Steichen tried a lot, I thought, during preseason to kind of keep a lot of things under wraps. So he did not really want to give any sort of tells. Has Jacksonville at all this week or even leading up to this game so far talk to what they expect offensively from the Colts? If it's going to be a big RPO, heavy game, deep shots, like if they kind of mapped it all out, a game plan of what they expect the Colts offense to look like?
I think they probably have the same view as most of the teams in the league. Like you just said, preseason, most coaches, it's pretty vanilla. They're not showing a lot. They're not, unloading the playbook. It's a very, standard style or playbook that they run. But I think when you're talking about the playing style of the players, with a guy like Anthony Richardson, who is, crazy talented, obviously playing at the University of Florida, we've seen tons of him here in Jacksonville. So that's kind of one of those things where some of the guys said that they may have needed to refer to some of his Florida tape, obviously, just to see the talent that he has and things he can do. I think you approach the game. I think you quickly approach the game with sort of a standard outlook as how you think the other team will be. But I think all of that quickly changes probably within the first quarter. I mean, after like the first series or two, you'll kind of get a feel as to what your game plan coming into the game. Is that something that's going to be, conducive for stopping that potential attack? But I think you have a couple things in your bag where you say, okay, well, we were expecting this, but now we're getting this. So let's quickly adjust. It's just that whole week one, you just never know.
You kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think it's kind of interesting. Right now, the Colts quarterback has played more games in the Jaguars stadium than he has in the Colts stadium. What is the view in Jacksonville? I mean, obviously fans down there have seen Anthony Richardson more than fans in Indy have.
It's funny. Most of the Florida fans that we have here in Jacksonville, they're actually pretty happy for him. Me as a Georgia guy, obviously, I've gotten the opportunity to see him in the Georgia-Florida game down here in Jacksonville. And honestly, having a chance to meet him a little bit during his pre-draft workouts that he had down here in Jacksonville. Didn't talk to him too much, but just from being around him, he's all around good guy. I know I have a couple of friends here in Jacksonville that have, had the opportunity to hang out with him. They know him. And, while he was working out here in the city, he was, hanging out in the city, going, just kind of being amongst the community. Just an overall good guy, aside from that whole orange and blue thing, I can't say a bad thing about him. But I mean, as far as of course, the Jaguar fans that are Gator fans, they're rooting against the Colts, but I don't think you'll find a single person here that's rooting against Anthony Richardson, the quarterback, just because, overall great dude, immensely talented. I mean, this guy's made some throws and done some athletic things that I've seen with my own two eyes that just I had no words to describe. So I think I can speak for the rest of the Florida community, the state of Florida community, and saying that, we hope that, he does well and has a long career ahead of him.
It's funny, Marcel. We're kind of talking before the podcast, before I came on, like this is a different year for Jacksonville in the sense that this is the first time in a very long time where expectations are high, and rightfully so. Obviously, that could do one or two things. That could galvanize the team, but also maybe could put undue pressure or added pressure, and they kind of maybe sometimes wilt under that pressure, especially week one. Where's the team's mindset going to this game where this has been, like you said, you coming off last year, a team that a lot of people are picking to win the AFC South easily, but also a team that now people are putting close, if not in, the upper echelon with the Chiefs, Bengals, Bills. Where's the team's mindset going into week one in terms of the pressure and expectations for a big year this year in Jacksonville?
I think it goes right back to the head coach. I think everyone is saying the right things, but I think they actually do believe that, expectations are just that, the outside expectations outside of the locker room and the building and the practice field. That's one thing that they don't really concern themselves with as much. It's really more so the internal expectations that they have inside the building. Talking to some of the guys in the locker room this week, that's sort of what they alluded to, is that, we're not really worried about where people say we should go, what we could do. We know what we can do because we're the guys in the locker room. They know that they have, there's no target on their back. They're not worried about going from being, the hunters to the hunted because they know what they have, and they just know the potential that they have in that room. They've seen themselves on the practice field, limited time in the preseason games. They know what this team is capable of. So I think the expectations that they have that they're living up to are their own internal expectations, in that, they're not worried about, if Trevor goes out there and doesn't win, the NFL MVP, but they get to the playoffs and potentially get to the Super Bowl, it's not a disappointment because he's not the quote unquote the best quarterback in the league. They just have, bigger goals and aspirations as a team, and they know how far they can go. They know that they have the pieces to do it. So I think the expectations are more so internal than external, which is why I don't think there's much pressure that they put on themselves to go out there and perform to the best of their abilities.
And last one for me, the last time I can remember Jacksonville coming into the season with this kind of anticipation was 2018, coming off that AFC Championship experience with the Saxonville defense. What went wrong that year, and how do you think this year's team is different in that regard?
I think coming off that 2017 year, I think they had the mindset that everyone else is putting on them right now that they don't have. I think coming into 2018, they had the primetime games, they had the late games, they were on the national slate, everyone saw what they did. And I think that 2018 team probably was feeling themselves a little bit. They thought that, they could kind of roll out there and say, hey, look, we did this last year. Like, we know this is what we can do. And I think they took that approach into the next year and quickly found out that, it's not just about what you did last year. When you have, the good year that you have, your schedule gets harder. Not only that, when you're coming into the next year, you have a little bit of a target on your back, regardless of where you end up, especially when you come in with kind of, the swagger and the things that they were saying and how they were acting. That locker room was definitely interesting. There was definitely a little bit of a heightened sense of accomplishment, I guess you could say, when truthfully, now it's very much that it's the complete opposite. It's definitely humble. Like, they know that they're good. I mean, the Jags, everyone in that locker room knows that they have the talent on that team to just go out here and, do what Oregon did last week and maybe put up 81 points, right? But there's definitely a sense of humility in there. And like I said, I think that starts from, the head coach and the quarterback. I think they're coming into this year like, yeah, we did last year. One good moment, we were talking to Roy Robertson Harris in the locker room earlier this week, and someone started asking him about, hey, based on what you guys did last year, wouldn't even let him finish the question. He said, we're not even talking about last year. That was last year. That doesn't even matter. Like, this is a new year. And as cliche as it sounds, like, that's the actual mindset that you have to have. I mean, you look at some of the great teams that have been great for a long time. They don't talk about what they did last year. You think, Patrick Mahomes and the boys are talking about, hey, we won the Super Bowl, let's go do it again. No, you start over. And I think that's exactly what the Jags are doing this year. Yeah, they're being talked about everywhere. Yes, they're one of the top teams in the league being talked that way, being expected to be that. But there's just really no, hey, last year, legitimately, rearview mirror, doesn't matter, because if you go out there with that mindset of, hey, we're the best team, we don't have to worry about it, we can come out here and roll out the ball and win, well, we've seen that story happen here before, and because of that, I don't think it'll happen again.
Finish off, Marcel, only way we know how, with a game prediction. This rivalry has been very interesting in the fact that it's been a home team dominated rivalry. No, Jacksonville's been the house of horrors for the Colts. On the flip side, just one time since 2013, the Jags have come into Lucas Oil Stadium and won. Obviously, the expectations have flipped for most part. It's always been the Colts expected to win. This year, especially in week number 1, it's the Jaguars expected to win, 5-point favorites on the road. Is this a chalk game for you? Jags win and take care of business? Or is this, do you think this week adds another wonky twist in what has been a very weird rivalry, let's say, the last decade?
I don't know, man. I think, I'm all for, for a good twist in a football game. But, for me, I just find it so difficult to see, just watching, seeing how the teams match up. I just feel like everything favors the Jags. Talk about, the coaching experience, the quarterback, the offense, defense, in terms of just what we've seen and what we expect. I honestly find it very hard to see the Jags not winning this game up in Indy. Obviously, you have to play the game, but it's very difficult for me to see, especially looking at, the Colts roster and, like you said, the changeover with the coach and the quarterback and missing other pieces. And I think the biggest key is not having Jonathan Taylor. I mean, the Jags not having to face Jonathan Taylor. I can't imagine a better scenario for them. And it would be very hard for me not to pick them, especially because you don't want to start off with a loss, and that being a divisional loss to set you back even farther.
He does a tremendous job covering the Jags for Action Sports Jax. You'll see him in Lucas Oil Stadium on Sundays. Marcel Robinson joining us again. Marcel, great to have you back on the pod. Great to have football back. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Blue Horseshoe Podcast.
Absolutely, fellas. I appreciate it so much. I'm looking forward to the hospitality of sub 100-degree temperatures up there in Indiana.
That we got for you. That much I think we can deliver.